Hi, hello, welcome to another reading vlog, an impromptu reading vlog. But I am here with another episode of reading the lowest rated books on my TBR. Love filming these, you also seem to love watching them, but I love filming them because often when I buy a book, it ends up on my shelves and then I start hearing not so great reviews for it, I don't pick it up. My excitement wanes somewhat and I am influenced by others. But sometimes, and these vlogs have demonstrated, I disagree, because maybe it's just quite a divisive book and some people love it and some people hate it, and I actually end up being one of those that love it. So, love filming these in order to push me to read those books, and I'm currently reading one of those books. So I'm buddy reading this book here, The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse, with my friends here on YouTube, Leanne and Victoria. I will link their YouTube channels down below. We have been reading this together because we all had it on our shelves and we'd all heard really mixed things, so we thought it would be a good one to share thoughts on, and so far it has been. I'm actually halfway through at the moment and loving it, so I am really surprised that this one has less than a 3.5 average rating on Goodreads, which is usually my benchmark for these videos. I look at books I currently have on my shelves that have less than 3.5 as an average on Goodreads, which isn't altogether a bad rating. I don't think 3 is a bad rating to give a book, but to have less than 3.5 on Goodreads usually indicates that there have been more people who have given it lower ratings, which has pulled down the higher ratings. You know how averages work. And that has me incredibly intrigued as to why some people have rated it lower. Is something going to happen in this book I'm going to hate, or is it just the overall book isn't for everybody? Because like I said, loving it. The writing, so compelling. I'm 200 pages in to what is a 400-page book, and I've read it so quickly. Like, it is a much quicker book than I expected it to be, but there is still a lot of detail and a lot of richness to the prose, even with that fast pacing, and it's very intriguing. It is about a police officer who's currently on a bit of a sabbatical because she had a traumatic experience at work, and then shortly after her mum died, so it's been a pile on, and her brother has just gotten engaged, but she and her brother are somewhat estranged, so she hasn't seen him in quite a few years. But her and her partner go to this hotel in the Swiss Alps, which is a converted sanatorium, which was originally for tuberculosis patients in the early 1900s, to celebrate her brother's engagement. So she and her partner are visiting this hotel, ex-tuberculosis sanatorium, to see her brother and his fiancée when his fiancée goes missing, and they are in a very rural, mountainous, snowy, dangerous weather region. So of course, even as an on-sabbatical police officer, she's the one they look to in order to help, but there is a lot more that goes on than that. There's a lot more than just that missing sister. There's so much that happens in this book. It can get quite dark at times, it can get quite creepy at times, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. So I thought, since I'm halfway through and still have a chunk to read, I would delve into a new episode of this vlog series and share with you my thoughts as the book progresses, because perhaps, like I said, something's going to happen in the second half that has people really divided, that makes people like this book less, and I don't know how I'm going to react to it. So it might be fun to take you on that journey, but also use this as an excuse to read some more books that have a lower average rating on my TBR. So I took some screenshots of the books on Goodreads which have a less than 3.5 average rating on there, and that I have on my TBR shelves to share with you, to give you an indication of what I might read in this video. I'll probably only read another 2 books as well as this, so it will be from this selection. The first one is The Van Apville Girls Are Gone by Felicity McLean. This is actually a literary thriller that I only picked up very recently, so it'd be good to read it soon before I perhaps absorb any more like negative reviews, because I'd like to give it a shot. I have bought it, I want to give it a try and see how I feel about it, and it is about these girls in this little town that went missing and the mystery surrounding that. We then have a short story collection which has been on my TBR for ages, and I've actually swung back and forth about reading because of its lower average ratings, which is American Housewife by Helen Ellis, which has an average rating of 3.37 as in when I am looking up for this video, and they are feminist short stories about, well, women's lives in America. I don't know if they're all housewives, but I am playing on that sort of quintessential idea of the ideal 1950s housewife and maybe making some more subversive points with that. Then we have Good Girls Die First by Katherine Foxfield, which is an average rating of 3.45. This is a YA thriller. I love YA thrillers. They are one of my favourite subgenres. I find them so compelling, quick to read, easy to read, but really escapist at the same time. So I'm hoping I'm going to love this one. Then there is Wicked As You Wish by Rin Chupeku, and this is book 1 in 100 Names for Magic, which has an average rating of 3.45. And this one gives me major Fables comic book or Once Upon a Time TV show series vibes, because it is about fairy tale characters in our world. Magical characters who've come from their magical world into hiding into the mortal world. And I love that concept. So the idea of reading a book about it after watching it on screen and reading it in comic book version really excites me, and I'm hoping I'm going to like it. But lastly, to keep the selection somewhat condensed, I have The Absinthe Errol, which is book 1 in the Fairy Rehistory series by Sharon Lynn Fisher. This has an average rating of 3.43, and I have this one on my Kindle. It is, again, a bit of a paranormal mystery romance set in a historical period, so it's sort of like urban fantasy, but urban historical fantasy, if that makes sense. And those are the books with slightly lower average ratings that are currently on my TBR that I'm going to be picking from during this vlog, depending on my mood, as well as finishing off Sanatorium and taking you along on that journey with me. So without further ado, let's just go read some books. Well, hi. It's like my slightly dishevelled, I've been sitting in the sunshine look. I've got quite a tan as well. Don't worry, I am like sunblocked up. I am factor 50'd to high heavens, but this is like a bit of an accumulative tan, and I've come inside now because it's still probably not great to sit in it for too long. And I thought I'd update you because I finished The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse, and I have all over the thoughts. I have all over the place thoughts for this book. Overall, I loved reading this book. I thought the pacing was captivating. The writing was really well done. Like, I think Pearse strings her sentences together like really, really nicely. I think the writing is very, very absorbing. And I couldn't put it down. It was an absolute page turner. I read it quite quickly for what is an almost 400 page book in terms of my regular reading speed. So for all of that, like, I loved it, and I would read more by the author in the future because I loved her writing. But there were some issues I had with the ending. I mean, this is so difficult when it comes to thrillers because it's so difficult for endings in mystery novels to live up to the hype you've built in your own head as you've been reading them and all of the build-up. But it was more that I had issues with the motivation behind the antagonist's crimes, if that makes sense. So there is murders in this book. And our police officer on holiday ends up being involved in having to solve those murders because they're trapped in a hotel that used to be a tuberculosis hospital and a sanatorium because of an avalanche, and the police in Switzerland can't get to them for a few days. So they're all trapped there with a murder having taken place and another person having gone missing, and the only person with any experience of law enforcement is this English police officer. So she's wrapped up in it all, and her name's Ellen, and she has a lot of baggage from her past that she brings with her to this scenario, particularly between her and her brother. And I really liked Ellen as a character. I felt like there was layers in the story, and that there was the contemporary mystery, but then also Ellen's own story in her past and her relationships with her family and her partner and all of that at play. It made her a very real character. But then there's the ending, and I'm not 100% sure. I feel like the author did try to do some interesting things, bringing to the forefront nearer the end, without spoilers, the themes of the way that women are treated in mental health institutions of the past. I mean, even now, but if you think of back in the day, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, how women were basically incarcerated in sanatoriums for not adhering to the norms of society. I love those themes, and I love books that explore those themes, but it was too little too late for me. I wish it had been a bigger part of the novel. If you're going to bring that into it, I wish it was there throughout, and it was more prominent. And I also just have issues with the motivations behind the antagonist. It's something that happens all too often in thrillers, in that the motivation, again, I don't want to give away any spoilers, is something that's just a little bit cliched and disappointing and could have been a little bit better and a little bit more original. So without giving away spoilers, that's kind of how I feel about it. But I enjoyed the experience of reading it so much. I'm sort of leaning towards a 4 stars, but then maybe those little issues that I have near the end would take it more towards the 3 stars. So maybe I am like a 3.5 star here. I've rated 4 stars on Goodreads because I thought the novel overall was captivating, and as a reading experience it was brilliant. So that's why I gave it 4 stars, but I can see easily why people would lean towards 3 stars, and therefore I guess why it has more of a average rating of like 3.4 or something like that. Yeah, I kind of now get why some people may have rated it lower depending on how they choose to rate things. But I would read more by this author in the future, so my thoughts are basically all over the place. They just are. I can't help it. And I'd be happy to chat about it more in the comments if you have read it or want to know more about the ending. If you want spoilers, I'm happy to give them to you, as long as I'm not accidentally spoiling people who don't want to be spoiled. So yeah, I am now going to start my second book of this vlog, and I think I'm going to start the short story collection American Housewives, because I've just had that one on my shelves for the longest out of all the books I mentioned I might read in this video. That one has been there for such a long time. It's shocking how long I've owned that book and not read it. So I think I should take this as a sign to finally get around to it and see how I feel. What's wrong? Am I reading my book and not talking to you? I'm so sorry. Just me again. I've just been eating my lunch and starting American Housewives, and I just had to come on because the second story is hilariously disturbing. Story 1, it was only like 3 pages long, could leave it, will not stick with me ever. Story number 2 is 2 women that live opposite sides of one another in an apartment building, so they have a shared hallway space, shared foyer. I think I've got peanut butter on my teeth. They have this shared hallway, and they start up like an email dialogue between the 2 of them about like what the hallway space should look like, and it descends. It is so funny. Also just like completely wired. So I just thought I would give you my immediate reaction to that, because I'm just like cackling away here by myself, and thought you might like to hear from me. So I've just finished story number 3 in this collection, which was called Dumpster Diving with the Stars, and it's about a reality TV show in the US, which is all about it's a bit like Bargain Hunt in the UK. There's probably a US equivalent, but basically the contestants have to go and find things within a budget second hand, which they can then make a profit from, and whoever makes biggest profit wins. But each of the contestants is a celebrity, so we have a writer, we have a Playboy bunny, we have a tennis player, we have actors, and some other sports personalities, I think. And I love this story. I would have read it if it was a whole novel. It sounds like a silly odd concept, and I was nervous going into it, not only because it's probably one of the longest short stories in this collection. It was quite long. I'm now on page 70 something, and the first 2 stories weren't very long, so yeah, it was a longer one. And at the beginning I was thinking, oh goodness, we have this quite literary author who's been framed as having written a cult classic and awards, and she's talking about her friend who writes sort of traditional chick lit rom-coms, and then going on this reality TV show and being teamed up with this Playboy bunny, and these all seem like very stereotypical female characters in contrast with our literary author who's sort of framed as the opposite to them. But then it goes completely in the opposite direction from what I expected. I was worried it was going to be descending to women who perhaps conform to some traditional gender norms, or who are associated with more of those like feminine gender norms, but in fact the writer gets on with them so well. She's so complimentary of them, and she has this amazing like chemistry with them all, and their differences, and the contestants on this reality show end up just all bonding and buddying up together against the producers, as opposed to them all being pitted against one another, which is what the producers want. And I loved it. It was so positive, and I'm loving this collection of short stories. I don't know why it doesn't have higher ratings. It definitely uses humour, and I know humour is something that is very, very individually taste based, and I find that a lot of humorous books get lower ratings because the humour doesn't jive with some people. But at the same time, I just feel like maybe the wrong people are reading this collection, because so far, and I'm about halfway through, I love it. Like, this is one of the best short story collections I've read in a while. Like I said, kind of forgotten about the first story. It was only 3 pages. It meant nothing to me. But the second story I really enjoyed, and now the third story I enjoyed even more. So can't wait to see what's next. Obviously I could hate the rest of them, I don't know, but so far so good, and I'm so glad that I finally picked this up. Another day, another story. Well, a few stories actually. I thought I'd update you on where we're at. There was another super short one. I don't think the super short ones really work for me. Like, they're just too brief. So it kind of, again, is a bit forgettable. And I'm talking like 2 pages here. Do you know what I mean? Not like 5, 6, 7 pages. Then there was one about a book club, okay? And I hated it at first. I was like, this narrator, this person who is basically addressing the reader as if you're a new member of this book club is so awful. But it went from me just being annoyed to it feeling quite sinister. So I ended up coming away feeling like, actually, that was really good, because the ending, like I said, was just quite sinister. So it gradually got there. And then I've just read another one which is called The Fitter, which was just weird. Again, I think she's really good at endings. Like, you really wonder throughout most of these stories where on earth this is going, and then you're like, oh. But it was still just weird. Like, they're all a bit weird, but in a good way. In fact, I noticed that there's a quote from Louise O'Neill here on the back, which says, "I tore through it. It's mad. Utterly mad, but brilliant." And I have to agree. I definitely think some of the stories are superior to others, but now being sort of past halfway, 2/3 of the way through, I can say I'm really, really enjoying it. Update from my bed. I am exhausted. But I thought I would check in because I've started my next book. So really ended up enjoying my short story collection. I mean, there is definitely stories I prefer to others. That's the nature of a short story collection. But overall, solid 4 stars, possibly a 4.5. So it was for me, it worked for me, and I think it will definitely work for the right reader. I think it's a really good book. Maybe it's just not for everybody. But I've started listening to the audiobook of This Is Not a Ghost Story by Andrea Porter, which I didn't mention at the beginning of this video, but I realised that it was a book that I almost read in the last version of this vlog I did. So the last time I did reading the lowest rated books on my TBR, I started this and then realised it was too similar to what I was currently reading, so decided not to read it at the time and compare the two. And I have the audiobook, so I thought, hey, this is my opportunity, I should go back to it and read it or listen to it. I'm not very far in, and so far I'm a little bit unsure, not sure about the narrator style. The narrator literally said something along the lines at the moment saying, "This is a very mysterious manor house, isn't it?" And then she says, like, her narration, she says something along the lines of, "I bet you'd like to know more about me and the secrets of my past, and I'll tell you, but in the meantime, let's look around this house together." And it's just a bit, I don't know, I found that a little bit cringy in terms of the narration, but I'm willing to give it a chance. It's about a college student who takes a job as a house sitter, basically, of this house that has all these rumours around it as being haunted for the summer. But I think it's as much about her past as it is about the house. So yeah, willing to give it a chance, but at the moment, not sure about the narration style. And it does have an average rating of 3.12, which is quite low. And it might just be because it's a very Marmite narration style. So we'll see. I would just like to say that I don't own a cat. I don't own a cat, do I? Just to clarify, that is my neighbour's cat, and I don't feed him, anything like that, but anytime the window is open and it's really hot at the moment, he just jumps straight in because he wants scratches. Yes, I don't think he's the only house on the street he does that to as well. So I was just putting on my makeup and he rocks up. He's like, I think it's time for some scratches. So I'm just giving him some scratches. And I thought I would update you on the vlog because I knew it was all going too well. I knew it was all going too well. It was bound to flop at some point. I am not enjoying this book and I'm just going to DNF the audiobook. Ain't nobody got time for that, do they? No. Yeah, I am going to give up on it. I just don't like the narrative style. It's not even that I'm like, oh, this is badly written or this is that or this is this. I just don't like the way it's narrated. It's an internal narration style from the protagonist who, like I said, is I'm just watching him in case he does anything. It's an internal narration style of what's going on in her head, but she thinks things I feel like people just don't really think. I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? But she's like staying in this house that she's house sitting for a professor she's never actually met before. She gets the job from an online ad. The professor was a bit odd at the beginning, a bit like, don't believe any of the rumours that this house is haunted. And then she's wandering around his house continually thinking, he would make a good father figure. Maybe he could be my father figure. And like, I get that unconsciously, it's very common to seek out parental figures and father figures in those older than you. Like, that happens very, very often. But I don't feel like people stand in other people's houses thinking, yes, he would make a good father figure. Like, that, it feels too conscious. It feels too explicit. It feels too like she is, you know, articulating that in her head in a way that you wouldn't. But it's hard. I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody would, but to me it's jarring, and just everything about the narration style is jarring. Like, it doesn't read naturally to me. And that's not to say it won't to other people, but yeah, I'm just not really enjoying it. So I thought, hey, I've got other things I could be reading and I'm just going to DNF this one. It is a bit annoying that I did buy it with an Audible credit and I've left it too long to return it, but hey ho, these things happen. And I also think that is where I'm going to end the vlog because, you know, I had a book I loved, a book I enjoyed most of, and a book that I've DNF'd. So a bit of a mixed bag, but pretty good. And it got me to try some books that had been sitting on my TBR and needed to be read. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this vlog. I'd love to know if you've read any of the books I've talked about in this video and what you thought of them, whether you loved them, whether you hated them. Please do let me know. Let's chat in the comments, and until next time, happy reading. Say bye. It's time to go home. No.